Everyone, Jeff could not be here this evening, so I have to do the footwork.
Introductions.
Well, no, I'll do this Jeff will do the introduction. I'll just say things like, there's a reception afterwards downstairs, you're all welcome to come. And the restrooms are either through that back door there, or you can go outside and then there's stairs, wide stairs that you can go down out there to go downstairs. Not through here, please. What else do I have to say? Cell phones off, and is there anything else I have to tell you? I think that's it. You all have your sing-along sheets. That's all that's important.
There is an exam at the end. Thank you very much, and a warm welcome to all of you here. We are Eric Banger and the Mashers, and we are very excited to present this concert about spirits and the supernatural in Irish and British folk music. There are few words in the English language more difficult to define than spirit. Of course, the word contains a range of meanings, from soul to a kind of ineffable energy or quality, from a disembodied ghost to hard alcohol, or as a verb to convey something rapidly and secretly. The word spirit comes from the Latin word spiritus, which actually means breath, a meaning that can still be seen in other words borrowed from Latin, like respiration, the act of breathing. The Latin word also means vigor, strength, power, and on some levels, the soul. When life leaves the body, it was long believed from antiquity to the early modern period that the soul was attached to the last breath, the last spiritus that left the body. The songs we're performing tonight deal with spirits in all of these permutations, which, as we will see, often serve as a means to discuss uncomfortable or even taboo topics. We'll hear about the vengeful ghosts of those wrongfully murdered, some songs in fact sung by shades of the dead. We will hear tales of the fairy folk and other often problematic interactions with people. We will share stories of magic, and of course we will praise the otherworldly qualities of distilled spirits. At points, we will ask you to contribute your own spiritus in the form of singing to the evening. In fact, we ask you to join us on our very next song, so you get to work right away. This song is a humorous one, and it's centered on the mystical properties of a favorite drink of mine, whiskey, in the context of an Irish funeral. Now, whiskey comes from the Irish word, I'm sorry for all this philology, but it comes from the word ishkabaha, which translates as the water of life, a magical elixir. In the song, Tim Finnegan's Wake, which we're going to do all together, whiskey is both the cause of Tim's demise as well as his resurrection. But before we begin, I just want to read the first two stanzas of The Dream of Wandering Angus, a poem by W.B. Yeats, as a sort of invocation to all of us here as we begin, but also to the fairy folk and to the Congress of Shades who may be present with us tonight. I went out to the hazel wood because a fire was in my head, and cut and peeled a hazel wand, and hoped a berry to a thread. And when white moths were on the wing, and moth-like stars were flickering out, I dropped the berry in a stream, and caught a little silver trout. When I had laid it on the floor, I went to blow the fire aflame, but something rustled on the floor, and someone called me by my name. It had become a glimmering girl with apple blossom in her hair, who called me by my name and ran, and faded through the brightening air. Tim Finnegan lived on Walking Street, a gentle Irishman mighty odd. He'd a beautiful brogue, both rich and sweet, and her eyes in the world he carried a hod. You see the sword of the Timlin way, with a love for the liquor poor Tim was born, to help him on with his work each day, the drop the trade, the red came on. What the land of bless you wonder what the glory of Turner shake. One day, one shoot, I told you lots of fun that Finnegan's Wake. You can clap along if you want. One morning Tim felt rather full, his head felt heavy which made him shake. He fell from the ladder and he broke his skull, and they carried him home his corpse to wake. Rolled him up in a nice clean sheet, laid him out upon the bed, with a gallon of whiskey at his feet and a barrel of porter at his head. What the ladder, bless you, wonder what the Lord in Turner shake. One day, for the truth I told you lots of fun at Finnegan's Wake. Good. His friends assembled at the wake, and Mrs. Finnegan called for lunch. First they brought in tea and cake, then pipes, tobacco and whiskey punch. Biddy O'Brien began to cry. Such a nice clean corpse did you ever see? Take the water, you ragged iron, hold your gun, I'm the key. Work it out, that's your partner, work the law, you're trying to shit. Look at it, go to my shoulder, lots of law, and really get quick. And Maggie O'Connor took off the job, and Biddy says she, you're wrong, I'm sure. Biddy gave her a belt to the gown, and left her sprawling on the floor. Then the war did soon engage, 'twas woman to woman and man to man. To lay low was all the rage and roll, and the began. Look at that, that's your partner, rock the lawn, and time to shit. Wasn't it? Gonna shoot like soldier, lots of lawn, and doing it quick. You guys are good. It usually takes a really long time for an audience to get that. Mickey Maloney ducked his head when a noggin of whiskey flew at him. It missed him falling on the bed, and the liquor scattered over Tim. Tim revives, see how he rises. Timothy rising from the dead, said, where whiskey ran it came, his 100 keys to come in. What for that? That's your partner, one wrong, you're trying to shit. Wasn't it? So the truth I told you, lots of law, and didn't get sick. What for that? That's your partner, one wrong, you're trying to shit. Wasn't it? So the truth I told you, lots of law, and didn't get sick. So yes, another kind of resurrection being sung about in this place, I guess. But our next song is entitled Two Magicians. And a key theme in Irish and British mythological folktales is the idea of shape-shifting. It can be inflicted as punishment, as a kind of mischief, playing around, just a sign of magical ability. So, Two Magicians is about a magical blacksmith who threatens to deflower a young maiden and magically changes his form in pursuit. But little does this magician know that the woman is also a magician herself, who is kind of transforming through the pursuit. So, Two Magicians.
She looked out of the window as light as any,
and he looked in at the window as black as any silk.
hello, 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 you cold blacksmith.
You have done me no harm, you never shall have me maiden head that I have kept so long. I'd rather die a maid, but then she said me buried all in me grave. But the house is a nasty, husky, dusky, fusky, musky, cold blacksmith. A maiden I'll die.
She became a duck all on the street.
And he became a water dog and fetched her back again.
Hello, 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 you cold blacksmith.
You have done me no harm, you never shall have me maiden head that I have kept so long. I'd rather die a maid, but then she said me buried all in me grave. But the house is a nasty, husky, dusky, fusky, musky, cold blacksmith. A maiden I will die.
She became a star all in the night.
And he became a thunder cloud and thunder out of sight.
Hello, 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 you cold blacksmith.
You have done me no harm, you never shall have me maiden head that I have kept so long. I'd rather die a maid, but then she said to be buried all in me grave. But the house is a nasty, husky, dusky, fusky, musky, cold blacksmith. A maiden I will die.
nasty, husky, dusky, fusky, musky, cold blacksmith, a maiden I will die. She became a nun all dressed in white,
And he became a panting beast and prayed for her by night.
hello, 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 you cold blacksmith, you have done me no harm, you never shall have me maiden hand that I kept so long. I'd rather die a maid, but then she said be buried or with me grave, and I have such a nasty, husky, dusky, fusky, musky, cold blacksmith, a maiden I will die. She became a trout all in the brook,
And he became a feathered cock and popped her with his hook.
hello, 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 you cold blacksmith, you have done me no harm, you never shall have me maiden hand that I kept so long. I'd rather die a maid, but then she said be buried or with me grave, but I have such a nasty, husky, dusky, fusky, musky, cold blacksmith, a maiden I will die. She became a corpse all in the ground,
And he became the cold clay that covered her all around.
hello, 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 you cold blacksmith, you have done me no harm, you never shall have me maiden hand that I have kept so long. I'd rather die a maid, but then she said be buried or with me grave, but I have such a nasty, husky, dusky, fusky, musky, cold blacksmith, a maiden I will die.
Thank you very much. Just a couple other words of introduction. We have Anastasia Solberg playing fiddle for us. Liza Doolittle on vocals and bodhrán. And we have Zach Brandman. Sorry. And he's playing everything else. And my name is Jeff Doolittle. So the next three songs that we're going to do all deal with ghosts in various ways. The songs reference ghosts. Some, in fact, have some ghostly narrators. So the first that we will hear is a short piece, She Moved Through the Fair. Singer is a woman who visits her love before and after death, kind of mentioning at both times that their wedding day is not that far off.
My young love said to me, my mother won't mind, and my father won't slight you for your lack of kind. And she stepped away from me, and this she did say, it will not be long, love, till our wedding day. She stepped away from me and went through the fair, and fondly I watched her move here and move there, and then she went homeward with one star away, as the swan in the evening flew o'er the lake. So softly she entered, she made no din, and she laid her hand on me, and she did say, it will not be long, love, till our wedding day.
What do people do to keep a forbidden love secret? We have a lot of songs about that. In Long Black Veil, written in 1959, kind of recent for our repertoire, a man goes to the grave to keep an illicit affair secret. The song here is sung by the dead man, and he invokes a banshee-like woman that he left behind, wandering the hills.
10 years ago, on a cold, dark night, there was someone killed in the town hall light. There were few at the scene, but they all agreed that the man who ran looked a lot like me. She walks these hills in a long black veil. She visits my grave when the night winds wail. Nobody knows, nobody sees, nobody knows but me. The judge says, son, what is your alibi? If you were somewhere else, then you don't have to die. For I said not a word, though it meant my life. I've been in the arms of my best friend's wife. She walks these hills in a long black veil. She visits my grave when the night winds wail. Nobody knows, nobody sees, nobody knows but me. For the scaffold was high and deep, turning near when she stood in the crowd and shed not a tear. For sometimes at night, when the cold wind blows in her long black veil, she cries over my bones. And walks these hills in in a long black veil. She visits my grave when the night winds wail. Nobody knows, nobody sees, nobody knows but me. She walks these hills in a long black veil. She visits my grave when the night winds wail. Nobody knows, nobody sees, nobody knows but me.
For the next set of 3 pieces, 2 songs and 1 reel, we're returning to the idea of shape-shifting and magic. The next song that we're going to do, Polly Vaughan, is also on your chorus sheets. You can join in with us on this again. Polly Vaughan is a very interesting song. It goes by several different names. It can also be Molly Vaughan. Polly Vaughan spelled 1,000 different ways. It recounts a very tragic hunting accident, but it's no ordinary hunting accident. In the twilight, a hunter saw a swan and loosed an arrow, but only too late realized it was his beloved. Strange story as it sounds, but it does have some roots in mythology, about Irish mythological tales about Aoife and the children of Lear. A classic wicked stepmother, Aoife, transformed the 4 children of her husband into swans for 900 years as jealousy, and they were hunted by many, many different enemies and people over those 900 years. next two pieces actually have the exact same name. They technically reference the same supernatural figure, Tam Lin. One is a ballad, and the other is a reel, also known as the Glasgow reel. But they both reference this character, Tam Lin, who was a folklore figure from the Scottish borderlands, kind of in between Scotland and England. And the song has undergone 1,000 transformations. There are so many different versions of this song, where this supernatural figure is a menace, where he's like a misunderstood, hipster, all different kinds of permutations of this figure. And so we're going to do one that's based on the Child Ballad version, which is a collection of English and Scottish folk tunes.
Janet sits in her lonely room, sewing a silken seam, and looking out on Carter Hall, among the roses green. And Janet sits in her lonely bower, sewing a silken thread, and longs to be in Carter Hall, among the roses red. She's let the seed fall at her heel, the needle to her toe, and she has gone to Carter Hall as fast as she can go. She hadn't pulled a rose, but only one. When then appeared in young Tam Lin, says, "Lady, let alone."
What makes you pull the poison rose? What makes you break the tree? What makes you come to Carter Hall without the leave of me?
But Carter Hall is not your own. Roses there are many. I'll come and go just as I please, and not ask leave of any.
And he has took her by the hand, took her by the sleeve, and he has laid this lady down among the roses green. And he has took her by the arm, took her by the hem, and he has laid this lady down among the roses red.
There's 24 ladies fair, sewing at the silk, and Janet goes among them all, her face as pale as milk.
And 24 gentlemen playing at the chess, and Janet goes among them all, as green as any glass. And up her spoke her father, he spoke in meek and mild. "Oh, alas, my daughter, I fear you go with child, and is it to a man of might, or to a man of means? Or who among my gentlemen shall give the baby his name?"
Oh, father, if I go with child, this much to you I'll tell. There's none among your gentlemen that I could treat so well. Father, if I go with child, I must bear the blame. There's none among your gentlemen shall give the baby his name. She's at the seat, fall at her feet,
chains holding her up to a white wolf. She held him tight and feared not. He was her own true love. Many chains holding her up to a wild bear. She held him tight and feared not. He was her husband dear. Chains holding her up to a lion bold. She held him tight and feared not. The father of her child.
And Betty changed all of her arms into a naked man. She's wrapped him in her coat so warm, and she has brought him home.
So the next song on your song list is Whiskey or the Devil. Medieval alchemists believed that the spirits, in quotes, or vapors released by the boiling of fermented grains in the distillation process had magical qualities. Indeed they do. They, in fact, were seeking the purest alcohol that they could refine, thinking that it would lead them to enlightenment. Whiskey or the Devil is a bit more playful. It looks at the effects of spiritual possession of a very different type. And it's a fun song for us all to join in with. Whiskey or the devil, you're leading me astray. Oh, hills and mountains, and to a merry K. You're sweeter, stronger, decenter, you're spunkier than Tay. Oh, whiskey, you're the darling drunker soul. Say the mother to the honey, don't take the daughter from me, or if you like the tourist, you have to let me go to the love. Fare you well, if you do that, you love it down, if you do that, you love it down. Near up the total, let me hold it, whiskey in the jar. Hey, whiskey, you're the devil, you're leading me astray. Oh, there's a mountain, then to a merry K. You're sweeter, stronger, decenter, you're spunkier than Tay. Oh, whiskey, you're the darling drunker sober. Ah, the great boys are marching up the course are calling Spain. Drums a beating, bangers flying, and jello holding on to love. There you go, look at these and them and down, these and them and down. Miracle total, let go, there's whiskey in the jar. Hey, whiskey, you're the devil, you're leading me astray. Over hills and mountains and to a merry K. You're sweeter, stronger, decenter, you're spunkier than Tay. Oh, whiskey, you're the darling drunker sober. Now the French are fighting loudly, and the Italian hospitality. Give every man his glass of powder and fire upon his shoulder. Now, there you go, with a doodle-doo-la-ma-da, dee-doodle-doo-la-ma-da. Miracle total, let me hold it, whiskey in the jar. Hey, whiskey, you're the devil, you're leading me astray. Over hills and mountains and to a merry K. You're sweeter, stronger, decenter, you're spunkier than Tay. Oh, whiskey, you're the darling drunker sober. Hey, whiskey, you're the devil, you're leading me astray. Over hills and mountains and to a merry K. You're sweeter, stronger, decenter, you're spunkier than Tay. Oh, whiskey, you're the darling drunker sober. Sadly, some songs are so horrendous that they have undergone substantial change simply because most singers are uncomfortable with the subject matter. We did have a few examples of that in our own repertoire as we were looking at songs for this. Some things you just can't sing about. This simple song that I'm going to do for us now traveled very, very widely. And from Ireland to Britain to America, versions even collected in the backwoods of Arkansas. But as it did, it transformed completely. Early versions of the song seem to have been more of a scolding tale of a horrible mother who killed her children, and the curse that was then laid upon her for 7 years suffering in all these different forms. Over time, the critical details were left out or changed completely, which leaves a very cryptic and ambiguous song behind. The mother becomes a father, verses about the murder the children drop out, the curse happens, but it's not explained. The only callback to the original versions is that there is this deep uncertainty about where the narrator is going to go, to heaven or hell. And ultimately, in most versions, still ends up going to hell, even though it doesn't really make any sense in the context of the song. So this one is Down by the Green Roadside. And the version I'm doing is a version collected fairly recently in the 70s in Ireland. As I was going down by my daddy's garden, all alone and alone, alone, I seen two babes a-playing a ball, and it's down by the green roadside. There was one of them was all dressed in blue, all alone and alone, alone. And another of them 'twas naked as born, and it's down by the green roadside. Oh, Daddy dear, when I was yours, all alone and alone, alone, You dressed me up in neither coarse nor fine, and it's down by the green roadside. Oh dear, you know right well, all alone and alone, alone, for where shall I go, to heaven or hell? And it's down by the green roadside. You'll be 7 years a stone in a bridge, all alone and alone, alone. You'll be 7 more a meowing cat, and it's down by the green roadside. You'll be 7 more a shock in a gap, all alone and alone, alone. You'll be 7 more a curl-tailed rat, and it's down by the green roadside. You'll be 7 more a pigeon in white, all alone and alone, alone. And down to hell you'll take your flight, and it's down by the green roadside. Please join Didn't mean to do that. Please join us on the next song, which is one of the most famous ballads in Irish folk music, Molly Malone. Which again, when you think about the lyrics, she also is singing talking about her as a ghost by the end of it. So the next song, Molly Malone, and the one after that, Banks of Red Roses, they're delightful melodies, dreadful stories. So the Banks of Red Roses has a terrible story at the core of it, but you'll hear it in this song.
When I was a young
got me fiddle for to play me love tune. In the middle of the tune, oh, she sighed and she said, "Oh, me Johnny, lovely Johnny, would you leave me?" Well, he took her to his lodge and he treated her to tea, saying, "Drink me, dearest Mary, and come along with me." Saying, "Drink me, dearest Mary, and come along with me to the sweet and lovely banks of red roses. On the banks of red roses, me loving I sat down, and I took out me fiddle for to play me love tune. In the middle of the tune, oh, she sighed and she said, "Oh, me Johnny, lovely Johnny, would you leave me?" Then they walked and they talked till they came unto a cave where Johnny all the day had been digging up a grave. Where Johnny all the day had been digging up a grave for to leave his lassie low among the roses. On the banks of red roses, the loving I sat down, and I took out me fiddle for to play me love tune. In the middle of the tune, oh, she sighed and she said, "Oh, me Johnny, lovely Johnny, would you leave me?" Then he took out a penknife, it was both long and sharp, and he plunged it right into his own dear old Mary's heart. And he plunged it right into his own dear old Mary's heart, and he left her lying low among the roses. On the banks of red roses, me loving I sat down, and I took out me fiddle for to play me love tune. In the middle of the tune, oh, she smiled and she said, "Oh, me Johnny, lovely Johnny, would you leave me?"
There's some controversy about our next piece, which is entitled "The Fairy Queen," composed by Turlough O'Carolan, who's the famous blind harpist of Ireland in the 17th century. The music evokes the period of the bards in ancient and medieval Irish courtly society. It's the kind of music that would have accompanied the retellings of mythological and folk tales about the fairy folk. Turlough O'Carolan claimed that it was a much older melody, and it sounds it. But recent scholarship has proven it's probably from right around his time. But sounds it. make fairy queens very happy.
Wow.
Another motif in Irish and British mythology and folklore is that of the foolhardy host, a welcoming host who promises his guests absolutely anything and comes to his own undoing when the guests inevitably ask for something that the host cannot or should not give. So this song, The Man You Don't Meet Every Day, is a simple drinking song. It envisions a wealthy man buying drinks for his mates at the pub. But the subject evokes that connection to the foolhardy host, someone who is so generous beyond his means that he becomes in fact a pitiable figure. In ancient mythology, journeys to the Celtic otherworld could take many forms. Ships to hidden islands, portals to underground kingdoms. This next song explores a kind of otherworld journey which takes place in dreams, in the imagination. It was written by Michael Considine as a poem in the later 19th century. He was an immigrant from the west of Ireland who came to America, and in fact went as far west as California in the gold rush. The song itself is autobiographical. It references real places and people in the songwriter's life. Now, Michael had meant to return home to marry the sweetheart in the song. In fact, it's this poem that he had sent home. But he got mortally ill. And so he wrote it and sent the poem instead of himself. Last night as I lay dreaming of pleasant days gone by, my mind intent on landing to higher and I did fly. I stepped on board a vision and followed with the will, till next I came to anchor at the cross and spans of hill.
In the 23rd of June, the day before the flag, when island sons and daughters and friends aside
think I hear it still. It's the little stream of water that flows down Spansel Hill.
Who's a passing fancy? I lay down on the ground, and all my school companions, they surely gathered round. When we were home returning, we danced with right goodwill to marching Monaghan's music at the cross at Spansel Hill.
I went to see me neighbors, to see what they might say. The old ones were all dead and gone, the young ones turned in grey. But I met the tailor pygmy, he's as bold as ever still. Ah, he used to make me wishes when I lived in Spansel Hill. I paid a flying visit to my first and only love. She's as white as any lily, as gentle as a dove, and she threw her arms around me, saying, "Johnny, I love you still." Ah, she's yet the farmer's daughter, the pride of Spansel Hill. I dreamt I knelt and kissed her, as in the days of yore. Ah, Johnny, you're only joking, as many the time before. And the cock, he crew in the morning, and he crew both loud and shrill. I awoke in California, many miles from Spansel Hill. Thank you. Psalm 5 on your sheets. The word inspiration, to return to this idea of spirit and breath, actually means breathing in. But it also is a spark of creativity which comes via an inhaled breath. In the Celtic tradition, however, the creative spark usually comes, not surprisingly, by something imbibed, especially fermented beverages like mead. In Latin, prayers to the gods were carried on the air. In Celtic Europe, they were carried through water, as deposits of ritual objects in lakes, rivers, and holy wells can attest. So this hymn that we're about to sing, and it is indeed a hymn, to whiskey, and the magical process of whiskey making, approaches some of this ancient thinking about the mystical, and indeed praiseworthy power of liquids. Sometimes, the ghosts that are most troubling are not the ethereal ones, but the ones in our head. Perhaps that's all the ghosts really are. A misremembered, guilt-laden memory of things and people long past. The most recent song in our repertoire was released in 1994 by the Cranberries. It was a protest song written in response to the killing of 2 young boys by a provisional IRA bombing in Warrington, England in 1993. It's Zombie. We have already spoken of magical shape-shifting, of beings and people taking on the forms of animals to deceive and manipulate. But here, in our next song, a woman takes advantage of the rather magical qualities of alcohol to shift her drunk husband's perspectives on the evidence of her extramarital infidelities left all around their house. As I went home on Monday night, as drunk could be, I saw a horse outside the door where my own horse should be. Well, I called my wife and I said to her, will you kindly tell to me who owns that horse outside the door where my own horse should be?
Ah, you drunk, you silly old fool, still you cannot see. That's a lovely sound that me mother said to me.
Well,
It's many day I traveled 100 miles or more, but a saddle on the sound shore I never saw before.
as I went home on Tuesday night, as drunk could be, I saw a coat behind the door where my old coat should be. Well, I called my wife and I said to her, will you kindly tell to me who owns the coat behind the door where my old coat should be?
Ah, you drunk, you silly old fool, still you cannot see. That's a woolen blanket that me mother said to me.
Well,
It's many day I traveled 100 miles or more, but buttons on the blanket shore I never saw before.
and as I went home, where's that? As drunk could be, I saw a pipe upon the chair where my old pipe should be. Well, I called my wife and I said to her, will you kindly tell to me who owns that pipe upon the chair where my old pipe should be?
Ah, you drunk, you silly old fool, still you cannot see. That's a lovely tune, silly mother said to me. Oh, it's many day I traveled 100 miles or more, but tobacco in a tin whistle I never saw before.
And as I went home on Thursday night, as drunk could be, I saw two boots beneath the bed where my own boots should be. But I called my wife and I said to her, will you kindly tell to me who owns the boots beneath the bed where my own boots should be?
Ah, you drunk, you silly old fool, still you cannot see. That's two lovely trading pots, my mother said to me. Oh, it's many day I traveled 100 miles or more, but laces on geranium pots I never saw before.
And as I went home on Friday night, as drunk could be, I saw a head upon the bed where my own head should be. Well, I called my wife and I said to her, will you kindly tell to me who owns the head upon the bed where my own head should be?
Ah, you drunk, you silly old fool, still you cannot see. That's a baby boy that my mother said to me. Well, it's many day I traveled 100 miles or more, but a baby boy with whiskers sure I never saw before. Ah, you drunk, you silly old fool, still you cannot see. That's a baby boy that my mother said to me. Well, it's many day I traveled 100 miles or more, but a baby boy with whiskers sure I never saw before.
All right, so we're going to have some assistance on this last song that we're going to do tonight. Wonderful. This is Song 6 on your chorus sheet, so you can all join in as well. Ancient traditions, of course, emphasize the holiness of certain trees, particularly the oak. In fact, the word druid, relates to its the connection to oak knowledge. That's what the word itself means. There was also an ancient reverence for bogs, as evidence of sacrificial victims found in peat bogs from across northern Europe can attest. The so-called bogmen. And so this very silly song that we're going to do still has this supernatural mythological connection. It is the Rattling Bog, a silly, cumulative song, but one that also unites the sacred tree and the sacred bog.
Hey ho, the rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, the rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Well, in that ball there was a tree, a red tree, a rockin' tree, and all the walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, the rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, the rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Well, on that tree there was a little red rockin' little tree, and a tree, and all the walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, the rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, the rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Well, on that wind there was a birch, a birch, a tree, and a tree, and all the walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Well, on that branch there was a tree, a red tree, a red tree, big and branch, a branch, a limb, and limb on a tree, and all the walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Well, on that tree there was a nest, a red nest, a red nest, big and tree, and a branch, a branch, a limb, and limb on a tree, and all the walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Well, on that nest there was a egg, a red egg, a red egg, nest, a nest, big and tree, and a branch, a branch, a limb, and limb on a tree, and all the walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Well, in that egg there was a bird, a red bird, the egg, the nest, the nest, and a big and tree, and a branch, a branch, a limb, and limb on a tree, and all the walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Well, on that bird there was a red bird, the egg, the nest, the big and tree, and a branch, a branch, a limb, and limb on a tree, and all the walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Well, on that bird there was a tree, a red tree, a rockin' tree, bird, the egg, the nest, the nest, the big and tree, and a branch, a limb, and limb on a tree, and all the walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Hey ho, rockin' ball, walk down in the valley, oh. Thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you very much. Now, as we say goodnight, may we conclude with the final stanza of the poem that we started with, the sad wandering Angus, which details the effects of his brush with the other world. Though I am old with wandering, though hollow lands and hilly lands, I will find out where she has gone, and kiss her lips and take her hands, and walk among long dappled grass, and pluck till time and times are done, the silver apples of the moon, the golden apples of the sun. Thank you, and good night.